The skeleton sleds have been loaded onto the trucks and thrown in the garage. It's time for the bigger, noisier, and sometimes faster bobsleds to take to the ice. We're in Park City, Utah for stop number 2 of the Viessmann FIBT World Cup Olympic 2013-2014 season. Women's bobsled run 1 just moments away. Hello once again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer, pleased to be joined for our 24th year together calling sliding action. Veteran analyst John Morgan. John, this 15-year-old track presents quite a few challenges.
One of the shortest tracks on the circuit, and it's pretty slow up here. A lot of Myers and Aja Evans have the track record at the start, 5:10. That could be challenged today. But watch here, the top of the track. You can't make any mistakes. It's slow. And then Sunny, this is where it really stops off, drops off, becomes very quick. It becomes one of the fastest tracks on the planet. This is a very, very quick track down here. And at these speeds, a slight tap doesn't hurt you too much, but the entrance and exit of the curves, like right here in this big Wasatch curve left, you can't nip that going in right there. It'll throw you to the belly of this curve. And if you do that, you could tip over into that curve there. Olympic curve into 14, 5 G's of force. This spot here is the graveyard of time. You're going uphill to the finish line, through and down. Short track, easy track to get down, and tough track to get down fast.
And a 7-year-old track record set by a pair of Americans. We saw track records fall in both of the skeleton races this morning, and part of the reason is because of the temperature. It's very cool today. It has warmed up a little bit, but not much above freezing. The World Cup standings reflect the one and only race that has been held. That was last week in Calgary with Humphries defeating Myers and Grubel, then the 3 German sleds. They will work all season towards those World Cup points. And we're pleased to have you joining us, especially those who have stayed up late in Europe, in Great Britain, and across the continent. We will hear your tweets at Bobsleigh TV. Also, emails at bobsleigh@gmail.com. As you can see, the temperature Celsius still very cold and just above 0 Fahrenheit. The ice has been slick. The sun, which was out earlier today, has moved behind the clouds, which should make for some very fast and consistent conditions for the second run, or for the first run, John. Women's skeleton and bobsled, rather. The Germans will start things off, but it was really the North Americans who dominated last week in Calgary.
Those two in 3rd and 4th positions, Myers and Humphries, they're the two to watch. Kiriasis, the seasoned veteran up, she gets to go off first. She's going to need all of the advantage she can with her deficient start time, but she could put 2 good runs down and could still be in the medals. We see Korean athletes, Kim and Shin, their ever debut in the World Cup bobsledding. The Koreans, of course, building for the 2018 Winter Olympic Games.
As well as 2 other British pilots you see there in the 17th and 19th positions making their season debut. So we're just moments away from the start of the competition, getting ready in the background. Without question, maybe not the best anymore, John, but you're looking at the greatest pilot in the history of women's bobsleigh. Sandra Kiriasis sliding today with Francesca Bertels.
Yeah, she was the Michael Schumacher, whatever you want to call her, of any dominant sport personality. She did it in the 2000 to 2010. Still had some good races in the last 3 years, including winning the World Cup test in Sochi last February.
They had a 2nd place on this track, the 2nd World Cup race of last year.
So anything around a 5:21 start, 5:22 start, I would think be the norm. 5:10's the start record, 5:41. Now that's either really, really slow, or the track's going to be really, really slow. But the other teams coming up, well, there's a mistake, a little wave. The other teams coming up should get down into the teens and challenge that track record.
Kiriasis is now 38 years old. You've got to believe this is the final year of what has been a spectacular career for the German.
You'll see lines. Look at the runner tips here. And that's A+. You won't see much variance out of this sled. Her nemesis is that 50-meter start. And on this short 1,200-meter track, watch out. There's the graveyard of time. You see the runner tips played a little bit. Yeah, she stayed away from that wall. 49.37.
As a point of comparison, that's about 0.6 of a second off the track record. And it actually leads me to believe, John, that we could see that record still challenged by the Canadians.
I think we're going to see 47.85. I don't think we're going to get that low. She's 3/4 going to be behind Humphries and/or Myers. Now, we're saying that. She's the rabbit. She's the first one out. Here's the graveyard. Look at the left side of her. She's trying to steer away from that. Little steering, little skid in the back. And look at her coach, Christoph Langen. Come on, he goes. Sandra, I would have never done that. He's a little bit of a perfectionist,
and
isn't
he can get a little wired, too, during these races. Olga Stelnova, formerly Olga Fedorova, former Olympic silver medalist in the Summer Games. Her longtime brakeman is Ludmila Udobkina.
So this start time here should be
better than the Germans.
Should be in the 20s, if less. 30.
Still 1,100.
I think we got a slow start track up there.
John, I noticed that if we look at the start list, we used to have Germany 1, Russia 1. Has that been changed where there's not a 1, 2, 3 in the depth chart in a country?
You know, the Germans were such dominators in the sport. You know, they don't have, I think that's just a typing error.
Okay, they didn't have that last week either. That's why I'm wondering.
I'm surprised at that.
Just show the country.
Just picked up something I did. You can tell how inexperienced she is driving. She's a great track and field athlete. Her 3rd year driving. Did better in Calgary last week. Here she is. Good chance of knocking off Kiriasis, and she stays straight, speed to the left. Didn't see any.
Well, I can tell you 82.4 miles an hour, and she
200's
does.
better.
That is interesting. And you've got to wonder whether it's an emerging Russian, a declining veteran Kiriasis, or a little bit of both, what we've seen the last 2 weeks.
I choose both. This is a rising star in the Russian program. She will be, I would give her a dark horse chance to win a medal in Sochi when she gets all the trips on that track in the month of February. Here's a mistake up top, the left side. She would have beat Kiriasis by 30, 40 hundredths. Now watch this high in the curve. Watch the runner tips. Looking for the spray coming off the runner tips. Look at something on the right side of the runner. Some kind of plastic is caught.
Interesting.
That's very interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that. She caught
question, did it make it go
hot
fast?
dog wrapper. It's not a hot dog wrapper.
That would you get in left field at a baseball game. Here comes the first of 3 American sleds. The USA figures to have 3 at the Olympic Games, led by this pilot, Alana Myers, a bronze medal winner as a brakeman at the last Olympics behind Aaron Pack. Her seemingly set brakeman for this year is Aja Evans, and they are a blistering fast team.
Athletes, 5-star, both of them. This has got to be in the teens, if not single digits.
Start record is 5.10.
5:16.
5:16.
That start track's not as fast as I expected it to be. Look how clean she is here. That's great. Now the slingshot effect out of the first real drop off. Curve sunny. She's running away within a quarter of a second. She's going to need a clean exit here. We're going to watch the runner tips come straight at us on the straightaway here in Albert's Alley right here. Perfect.
Well done, and a huge lead right now for the team that finished 2nd at the World Cup opener last week.
She is flying. Flawless run in the graveyard. I hope I don't jinx her. I did.
Well, one little tap at a 4600ths lead at the last split. Let's see how it spells out here.
Whoa.
Extending it, so certainly the sleds are set up well. Coaches Dion and Hayes like what they see.
I told you we'd get to the 48.80s. I think right now we have a chance. 48.86 on that run.
48.76, 300ths off the track record.
So the start track isn't what I thought it was, but the track itself is fast. And of course you got those 2 5-star athletes pushing the sled. I would give her a 4 out of 5 rating on that run right there, Tim. She made that one mistake in the graveyard. Graveyard of time. Look at the way the runner bounces up there in the exit. Now watch this. She drifts a little bit. She's trying to stay away. The back end skids, but she hits and doesn't steer away. Lets the sled hit and correct itself. Great run by Alana Myers.
The Americans are certainly favorites to win the Olympic Games. They won the test event last year in Sochi, but no one is a favorite until this team falters, and they certainly haven't. Pilot Kaillie Humphries, brakeman Heather Moyes rejoining Humphries, the gold medal winning team at the last Olympics, and they were nothing short of sensational in winning the opener last week.
I want to point out one thing. Watch the stride on Heather Moyes. Scientifically, I bet you if you took her stride against anybody else's, watch how high her feet are and the long length of her stride.
Start record is 5.10.
I would say they've got a chance to get close to it.
Oh! In 1.7, in fact, behind the Americans, which did not happen last week.
Yeah, last week there were 10 or 6/800s out of those Americans. But Humphries, the seasoned driver, the Olympic gold medalist, she won 6 out of 9 races last year in the World Cup Tour.
She goes from 100th back to 200s up from one split to the next. 83.4 miles per hour here in the mid-track. Still 200s.
Good lines, same as Myers. If she stays clean in the graveyard, she will be the leader by at least a 10th. Oh, but she lost a little time back there. Now watch it here in the graveyard.
Perfect.
Speed, no speed there.
It's funny, they gave this
100th of a second.
They gave the speed traps in the skeleton race earlier, but they're only giving us 2 now for the bobsled. Makes it a little tougher to calibrate, but how about this? You know, John, skeleton men, it's been the Russian and the Latvian. Skeleton women, the British and American. And so far, women's bobsled, these 2 sleds have been the class of the field.
Look at the lines here. She is a little late coming off that curve. Sets her up into 13-14. Not too bad there. On the bottom part of the track, she lost a little bit of time back. She had great speed up there on the top of the track. She looks a little perplexed, or just cold like it is.
We have seen the gold and silver medalists from last weekend put themselves in the top 2 positions here in week number 2, and this is the team that finished 3rd last year. USA pilot Jamie Grubel, brakeman Katie Eberling. Former track star paired with a former college volleyball star.
So anything in the teens, low 20s is probably what you expect. 2 excellent athletes.
5:28, a little probably below their expectations.
But she drove well last week in Calgary. Here in this track, she's been down a lot. Knee surgery last year really sidelined her ability. She did win a bronze medal on the Clown France, but I think she's starting to recover and show with the type of athlete she is. Out of Cornell University, track and field athlete.
It's the one pilot you said is really coming on more than anyone.
These are great lines. She's only 1200s back with that deficient start time. If she's clean here, this is the best run of all 3. She didn't have the start time.
Best speed at the middle of the track, 83.6.
That's the best run of the 3 right there.
This is an incredible race. It's the same 1, 2, 3 for the time being as the final results last week, but a lot closer, John.
She was the best run down the track of all 3, the top 3 sleds so far. Gave up a lot of time at the start, but Jamie Grubel, I think, is going to have a little coming out party here.
Tremendous athlete, just missed out on a spot at the 2010 Olympic Games, then as a push athlete, moved to the front seat and has made such great improvement in a short time.
Start, look at Eberling's head, the brakeman. Not a lot of left to right. Power step into the sled. You have to get in, get down with cat-like movements, put yourself in an aerodynamic profile. She does all of that.
From Switzerland, the pilot, Caroline Spani. Ariane Valsa, the brakeman. 7th place last week. That was actually a pretty respectable result for them.
Well, she was #1 in Switzerland. She knows she might not be able to knock off these top sleds, but being the #1 sled in Switzerland brings rewards. And the other sled, Fabian Meyer, was the #1 the last 3 years and the rising star in the Swiss program, but Spani has been coming on the last couple years. And I have admired her ability to drive the sled. Gives up a lot of time at the start. She had the 5th best start. She's way back in the start time. But if she holds the 2800, stops bleeding here, this shows you her driving ability. Stop the bleeding there. Look at those lines.
Great lines.
Perfect.
Bruno Manjean type lines.
Spani has been coming on wood like only down by 3600ths now, considering that start.
Little double tap
there, cost her a little bit.
She will be in 5th or 6th place.
Fourth place.
John, look at the top 6 and tell me who you see in 6th place right now.
The greatest women's bobsled driver since they had women's bobsled in the Olympics in 2002 for the first time.
Kiriasis and the Germans, 6 out of 6, and a good run there for the Swiss.
Great run for Spani with that deficient start time. She was 1900s behind at the start. That multiplies by 3. That's like, 60 hundredths, 57 hundredths behind. She should have been, but she overcame the deficient start time. Great drive down the track, but here in the graveyard, she lost at least a 10th down there. You're going uphill there. You can't make any mistakes down there. Good drive for Spani.
Second of 3 Germans to come, and as I mentioned earlier, the USA figures to have 3 sleds at the Olympic Games. Only 2 nations in women's bobsled will have 2, and the Germans will be the second. This driver is Anja Schneiderheinz, 35 years old, out of Erfurt, a gold medal winner at the 2006 Olympics behind Sandra Kiriasis. At that time, she was the best push athlete in the world.
Yeah, you should see some good start times here. Should be high teens, low 20s. 29. That's suspect for an athlete like this in the front seat.
5th place last week.
Look at that. That's a rough transition to take on. She got on too abruptly. And her deficiency is driving. Her asset is the start. She had the best starts last year. She won a race in Innsbruck on one of the tracks where it's real short. And her start time and 2 good runs, and she got away with it. But she needs a let. You saw what you saw right there.
Yeah.
This isn't tennis. You can't throw one of these heats away. And she just has a hard time consistently driving down the track. And without the good start time, she can't afford any mistakes.
She may be slower than anyone except her teammate as
big
she struggled
hit there.
Right across the finish line in 7th place out of 7.
Tim.
John,
we used to see the Germans 1, 2, 3 in these tracks.
Now you at least speculated last year that maybe, to put it nicely, they're pacing themselves a little bit.
I always say the Germans sleep in November, December, especially in Olympic year. They want to win the events at the end of the year. Now watch these lines here. Up top, you got to be quiet with the sled, no mistakes. She taps the ball, goes in here too hard on the take-on, gets pushed to the middle. And watch, she's coming in here, she taps again. She's got to steer almost twice as much as you need to. Now she steers out of this curve too early, skidding all the way down. Friction is like kryptonite to Superman in this sport. Can't happen. She probably steered that sled more than anybody else in the competition down the track. And the more you steer, the more time you lose.
The second Canadian sled, brakeman for this one, Chelsea Valois, who had so much success last year behind Kaillie Humphries, now competing with driver Jenny Cicchetti.
Cicchetti won a world championship, gold medal as a brakeman, 2012 in Lake Placid. She's in that front seat driving, great athlete, starting to learn some skills about how not to steer. That's as major error as you could make up at the top.
It's funny, John, the Park City track doesn't have a lot of danger, but it has a lot of tricky spots, and none more so than that area at the top.
That mistake right there is sayonara. But you can see she, like Schneiderheinz, great athletes from the brakeman position, they start driving. But not everybody's a great driver. Drivers are born. And you have that instinct, and then you become a world-class driver. You can't make a world-class driver out of a person without the skill.
29-year-old Edmonton native pilots the sled across 1 full second back, to the dismay of coach Stefan Bosch.
He's junior world champion for the Germans. Used to coach the Americans.
Lives right here in Park City.
Yeah, and coaches Canada. Watch this now. Look at her. She drives through that curve, and then she comes out too early. The back end hits. That's worth 40 hundredths at least at the bottom of the track. Here, not a bad exit, but obviously came in too early or come out too late. Look at her, she knows. But she's, work project.
Right now, the top 3, the Canadian and the 2 American sleds, are far and away ahead of the rest of the field. This is the lone remaining sled I'm guessing, in the field with any chance to, if not crack that top 3, to come close.
Well, you and I had our predictions before the race, and my top 3 are in the position they are.
And I had Martini at the number 3 spot. So we'll see what happens here. Kathleen Martini, a world champion, a former World Cup champion. Not too strong here at the start, but a great speed merchant. You ever use that term?
Once.
Okay.
35, 34. Yeah. Nemesis. But if there's anybody can come down this straight, right, or this track right down the middle, this girl can here. This is one of those athletes who was born to drive a bobsled. Her nemesis has always been start times. Look at this. She's holding her own. 2800s. If that gets down into the low 20s, she's got a chance, Tim. 28 to 28. Stop the bleeding. Perfect lines. Don't think she's going to have enough track. She might get it down into the teens. Put herself into a position for a good second run.
She's probably held steady now at this point with the uphill section. Really good line once again, but no closer than a quarter of a second.
Speed not there, 26. Considering the start time, that's not bad.
We've gone through 9 of the 10 sleds. The North Americans right where they were last week in the top 3 positions. Germany sitting in the 4th, 7th, and 8th positions.
This is like shocking, but I say again, the Germans want to peak in February. Kiriasis, who's in last place right now, won the Olympic test, second to last. You know, so she's just, you know, her 38-year-old body's waiting for February. Here's the start, in and down, good aerodynamic position from the driver or from the brakeman. This is as good a line as you can get. Look how low she is in the cowling for aerodynamics.
1 sled remaining here in the top seat. Hello to all of our viewers in England, including our friend Martin Haven, tweeting us every minute or so, enjoying listening to John Morgan say slingshot effect, graveyard of time, look at the heads, etc. You'll be hearing plenty from Martin in the second half of the season, but all of his countrymen watching this sled. The first of 3 from Great Britain, Paula Walker and Rebecca Wilson.
The only twosome in the field where the driver's much taller than the brakeman. There's no problem for her brakeman to get down there, get in behind her. Rebecca Wilson, about 8 inches shorter than Paula Walker, who might be the tallest driver in the field.
And a young athlete, just 22 years old, part of Paula Walker's Junior World Championship team in 2000.
On this track,
right.
She won a Junior World Championship. Didn't have a very good week in Calgary last week. 40-hundreds, still bleeding a little bit of time. These are not bad lines. 51 though, and she's got no chance to challenge today for the medals. But the lines were great. Look at her duck her head for aerodynamics. They try and gain every 100th of a second on this track.
She ties with Sandra Kiriasis, which has not happened many times in this pilot's career. To the 100th of a second, they're tied for 7th place, ahead of the other German sled and 1 Canadian.
And let me tell you, ducking your head at the finish line on this track for 100th of a second is worth it.
Sure.
There's going to be ties. Before we're done, there are going to be a couple more. There's 1 tie now on the board. But we've seen multiple ties for medals on this track over the years. Not a lot wrong with this run down the track by Paula Walker, who, you know, a little bit of a Monty Python attitude in her, huh?
Same 1, 2, 3 as a week ago in Calgary. The Canadians holding a slim advantage over 2 American sleds midway through Heat 1 here in Park City. A 2-minute break here on our television coverage, and really no big surprises except maybe the fact that the Germans still are underperforming.
Sleeping. I've been saying it last week. German men, I mean, Max on 4-man tied for silver medal last week, but Zubkov was the only German medal in the bobsled competition or the skeleton competition. The Germans just, Christoph Langen is, you know, I don't want to win the medals in February, December. I want to win them in January and February, especially in an Olympic year.
Earlier we had skeleton competitions. Noelle Picus-Pace of the United States captured the win with track records in the women's competition. And despite a track record in the men's event, Martin's Dukurs finished behind Russia's Alexander Trechikov. Dom Parsons tweets in, saying it was kind of encouraging for him that he could underperform in his mind and still finish in the top 10. That after a third place last year for a real emerging young British skeleton athlete.
Yeah, he was impressive last week in Calgary. He'd never seen the track and got out and snuck into a podium position. And but I think reality set in and he realizes there's a lot of races between now and the Olympic Games, but a great start for the season for Parsons. And Picus Pays, what a comeback for her. Disqualified last week when she blew away the field. Here she got the track record on her home track for the first time ever. She was very happy about that. But you know, can you imagine what was going through her mind all week?
Yeah, I mean, she is, by her own admission, a very, very emotional young woman, and she was in tears for about 48 hours after that disqualification last week, but clearly was able to regroup.
A lot of track records this morning. We saw a track record go at the start and the down for the men, and we saw the track record for the down on the women.
Back to the top of the track here at Utah Olympic Park, Tim Singer along with John Morgan in 10th place last week in the Calgary opener. Was a pretty good result for this team from Belgium. Pilot Elfet Willemsen and brakeman Hanna Marianne. They really made their first push in the season before the last Olympics, and they've made some pretty good strides.
Well, they had their own TV show from 2006 to 10. But yeah, last week, good result for them. And, you know, Marion is another one of those summer track and field athletes that, she's cycling, right? Summer track, she's a cyclist.
Which is a national sport.
And she's crossed over into bobsled and finished fourth, I think, at the push competition, the Winsport World Push Competition up in Calgary. Good athlete. And Williamson has been coming on as a driver. Belgium, you know, you think of Belgium, not a good bobsled country. Well, Belgium.
Huber.
Yeah, Huber.
Max Huben?
No, Max Huber is the name. Yeah, silver medalist at the 48 Olympic Games. Tragically killed in a two-man bobsled accident in Lake Placid in 1949 at the World Championships, and they renamed the two-man bobsled trophy the next year the Max Huber Trophy, which they still race for today. 9th
place, ahead of both Schneider-Heinz of Germany and Kachetti of Canada. That should stay in the top 10.
That's unbelievable. She's obviously improved her talent as a driver. 11th best start time out of 11 sleds, and here she is 9th, which means anytime you improve, you've done pretty good driving. The person in first place had the second best start. The person in second had the first best start. The person in third had the third best start. What's it tell you about starts in this
somewhat
sport?
Important, especially on this track.
Nice uniforms.
20 sleds in the field. This is the sled that finished in 12th last week from Austria, Christina Hengste. The pilot, Inga Versen. Brakeman, we will be in Eagles, Austria, outside of Innsbruck a little later on this season. That will be the last race to determine Olympic spots for many of the nations.
She medaled on that track before.
Which could be the only medal ever won by Austria in women's bobsled World Cup.
Very disappointing result last week in Calgary, and look at the start time. Just no chance when you have that much of deficiency at the start. Now you have to have the perfect home run drive down the track. And on this track, those little taps like that, that's not a home run. She's reduced probably to a double or a single, but the rest of the way she's perfect.
Deficiency at the start, John, 100th at the start would be what at the bottom?
Three at the bottom, depending on the track. On short tracks like this, it could be 4. Because this is the shortest track, I think, on the circuit. I think Innsbruck and Winterberg, Park City are there.
La Plagne.
No, La Plagne's a long track.
Is it?
It's
Okay.
long. It's 100 meters long.
A little bit of ice flying there around the finish curve. 11th place, 8100s back.
Manfred, he knows it's not what he expected out of his 4th-year driver, who's, boy, she got some passion for the sport. Lives, breathes the sport of bobsledding. Austria on rough times in the sport of bobsledding. Now they just don't have top pilots.
Yeah, men and women.
Yeah.
I mean, they had such a great tradition from Hubert Schasser, Ingo Appelt, and Wolfgang Stampfer. Great drivers, all of them. Very cold at the top. You can see that these athletes can't get in and off as quickly, quick enough, as the temperature hovers around 10 above Fahrenheit, but 12 below Celsius. This is the sled from Switzerland, piloted by Fabian Meyer and brakeman Elisabeth Graf.
Eric Allard standing behind him, former French Olympian. Now these two Swiss girls here, I'm telling you right now, they got one other sled in their target, and that's their teammates, because Caroline Spani, who sits now in 5th place, beat them last week and has been coming on every race. Meyer, a former junior world champion, I think in 2008. 2007, I think she won because she got a spot into the World Championships.
Right.
St. Moritz. Good driver, but I think she's just been caught by Spani, and she don't like it.
83 miles an hour at the midway point. Fairly good lines here.
And I don't think she's going to beat her teammate Spani unless she's perfect here.
No, she'll fall about 6/10 back. Be happy to be in the top 10. That's what she's looking at right now. 6th place, very close.
Yes,
so the
800s
Swiss are 5-6 right now.
And so that's a race within a race. Those two girls will be looking at each other.
Now it's likely that Switzerland, especially if they continue the way they are, will get 2 sleds at the Olympic Games. Certain nations get 3, then 2, then 1, based on their performance.
Look at her head and eyes above the cowling. Small girl, I would expect her to get a little lower in that sled. Here in the graveyard, look at the brakeman back there. You see some shoulders, but barely. That's real important aerodynamics coming up that hill, 75 miles an hour. Fabian Meyer, 6th place.
Dr. Esme Kampeis has the pleasure of having 2 great brakemen. She's coming up next. Thanks for that correction there. We've got a Russian sled before the Dutch. This is Anastasia Tambuksiva with Nadeza Paleva.
I think this is Paleva's World Cup debut. She didn't race last weekend, I don't think. And this is another great driver who just doesn't get a start time.
Now it looks like snow may be starting to fall. I'm gonna go check out at the window.
Start time real deficient. 46. Well, that's the tied for the 13th worst best start. So if she can get into the top 9 or 10, that means she's a good driver. But with that type of start, again, got to be absolutely perfect. Tee to green. The tee is T-box and bobsleigh. The start time.
Unless you can scramble like Phil Mickelson a la Kathleen Martini.
You can scramble, but if you're scrambling, it means you're turning the runners. Turning the runners, you're losing time. 6,600s back is not that bad considering that start. She gets within 80 it's not bad. 84.
13th out of 14. It just shows you how awful a ride that was for the Canadians.
She's 2,900s. She's 30 hundredths back at the start. Multiply that by 3. That's 90 hundredths. She'd be in the lead if she had a start time.
And it leaves me wondering whether there are some other great Russian athletes they may be experimenting. You said Palieva's a new brakeman for her this week.
There's no way she could bring somebody to the top of the sport in a short year or something.
Great look at the cowling there.
Yeah, see the runner tips? She's trying to get on the curve. Get on the curve early in the take-on so you can choose where you want to get off. Not happy.
Here's the Dutch sled. How could I confuse the orange earlier? And it's Esme Kampeis. Kampeis, the pilot, with Judith Viess. This is a long time off and on brakeman for Esme. Not competing last week, but 2 weeks ago had a great performance at the World Push Championships in Calgary.
Let me tell you this, Viess wasn't on the sled last week. Their other rookie brakeman was. And the Dutch press called our TV truck, wanted to know why Viess wasn't on the back of the sled.
Experiment and shuffle them in and shuffle them out in an Olympic year. Very, very light snowfall. Now as the Dutch load into the sled with a start time of 5:32.
And what we were told when we went to the top of the track, the coach told us that deck for the other brakeman won the push-off, which was very surprising. But this Decker is a good athlete. She was second in that push competition up in Calgary. So the Dutch, usually more famous winner for that little sport they call speed skating. Sometimes we see that on TV, don't we?
We've seen a little speed skating. I'll actually be at the Olympic qualifying in a couple of weeks back here in Salt Lake City. Dutch also do quite well in men's bobsleigh.
This is not a bad time considering that start deficiency. And the Graveyard gets her for a little bit. Threw it down.
Netherlands
not
in sixth
bad.
place, a half second behind the lead, a quarter of second out of the top four. A good run for Esme Kampeis.
7th best start, 6th best finish. That means she is a good driver.
And Judith Viess obviously adding a big advantage there.
Pick that sled up carefully. Look at the exit here. The runners, are they bouncing? Little bump on the exit of that curve. And here we look at it again. See that little bump? I think that starts getting the sleds to drift a little bit. I sort of like that bump. I don't like everybody coming straight down the track. It's boring.
For the second week in a row, 2 American sleds are in the top 3. And last week, the 3rd American sled, piloted by Jasmine Fenlater, struggled to near the bottom of the standings. Fenlater back on the course today with another brakeman, an Olympic veteran, Emily Azevedo, out of Chico, California.
Jasmine couldn't wait to get back to the track. That was as poor a performance as you could expect out of an athlete who won a World Cup medal last year. And he was up constantly in the top 10. I would expect she improves a lot. 5 kilometers. Always keep your eyes on that. It's the exit speed of corner 3.
And a great start, 5th best, which was not something that Jasmine and Lolo Jones produced last week. So Azevedo showing her experience here.
This is a top 4 or 5 run if she keeps up these straight lines. 25, a little bit of bleeding there, not much. To watch for the straight shot, yes.
This will be 4th or 5th place for USA.
Much better runs.
Check out those standings. The American coaches have reason to applaud, John. Canada, USA, USA, USA.
That was not. Field athlete.
This pilot has competed in the Europa Cup, a couple of top 5 finishes last season.
In the world, I think we saw her in the World Championships, the same race.
I'll get our researchers on that.
Not bad lines. Tap.
Great to see 3 British sleds in the competition. We don't expect to see 3 make it to the Olympic Games, but 2 conceivably could. So
look at her looking, look at the brakeman looking there. She wanted to put the brakes on. That's how she's a rookie in the sport. You saw her head come up. Peter Gunn will go, oh, he'll go tell her.
That's a rookie mistake.
Mistake right there.
And this is the first sled to finish behind the Canadians that held the bottom spot for quite a while.
She's not the only person that's ever done that. We've
seen it
bust
happen
somebody
here
for that a lot, because those 2 corners are the same. They're big sweeping rights. And, you know, as a brakeman, you don't sit back there as a sandbag.
I saw it here. I saw the Canadians do it in Whistler, which is inexcusable on their own track.
Now watch the brakeman. Remember, the head's supposed to be buried. Now watch this peekaboo. Hello. Get your head down there. Now that's what rookies do. You have to feel yourself down the track. You just can't be a sandbag. You got to know where you are, lean in and out of the sled. It's really important. That brakeman just doesn't sit back there.
3 sleds remaining now, and this is the sled from Australia. Astrid, formerly Wilkeson, now Radjanovic, and her brakeman, Jana Pittman.
Pittman, another track and field athlete, 400-meter athlete.
Astrid, 31 years old, now makes her home in Eastern Europe.
Here comes the snow. New sled this year. Very excited about that. She's the one-man band. She's the coach, manager, fundraiser.
And no Australian men's sled, at least over the first couple of weeks. Steve Spence no longer with the group.
No, he's over in the North American Cup in Lake Placid this weekend.
Where they could garner more points.
Probably see him next week.
As far as Olympic qualifying, right?
Half the points down there, but they do double races, so it's a lot better for those small nations to go and get more points. Astrid, you can see, good lines considering the start time. She's got the 12th best start time.
Top 15 would be a nice result for them in this field of 20. Across the finish line in 14th place, 7,800s back.
But she beat 4 other teams. You know, that's what she does. She just hangs in there. She's a grinder. You know, says she's going to retire at the end of this year. She's put her time in. And boy, you talk about working with nothing. This young girl here, she's the chief bottle washer of everything to do with this team. A lot of support from the Australian Federation. Tap there, good lines. She's got the instinct. Look at her eyes, barely above the Kaillie. Bounce in there.
Well, we have 2 sleds remaining, and this next one is going to be very interesting to watch. A very young British pilot, 20-year-old Micah McNeil from Newcastle, and a very experienced and decorated brakeman, 31-year-old Scottish brakeman, Gillian Cook, a world champion back in 2009 with Nicola Minichiello.
McNeil, you can look at the holes in the push bar. That's to get the weight out of the sled. Probably an old man sled, but
that's a disappointing start time from Cook, who in her best years was one of the fastest.
Worst disappointing was the exit of curve 1. They slid through that. McNeil, they got a lot of high hopes for. Junior Olympian at Innsbruck, I think she medaled. That was a quick dive out of that curve.
And Gillian Cook still holds the Scottish indoor long jump record, 6.43 meters.
I can tell you one thing, Tim, it's going to be an exciting race. The top 3 sleds separated by 3/100ths of a second.
Bit of skidding in the straightaway to the uphill portion, not a good place to skid, and they fall into 19th place. Peter Gunn probably just happy to see this sled make it down in their debut effort of the driver.
They stopped the sled pretty quickly.
Unlike the Americans.
Right. Let it run into the cement wall. He's pretty high above the Kaillie. Anytime you can see that nose piece, I think you're pretty high. I think you got to just see your eyes just barely over that Kaillie. Tap before you get in. She pushes her now into the middle of the curve where she's got to steer. You want to get in that curve early so you have a choice to get out any place you want. If you get in that curve late, the curve's going to tell you where to get off the curve, which means you got to steer.
Final sled now in heat number 1, still ahead, the men's first heat, with an interesting format over the first few weeks here on the World Cup, where they'll run back-to-back first heats and then back-to-back second heats. It is not Jamaica, but it is a sled acquired from the Jamaican team, the Koreans. Gomer Lloyd coaching, another year, another nation for Gomer. What do you know about these guys?
First time I've ever seen either one of them, but obviously they would be good athletes. I don't think we've ever seen a Korean women's bobsled team. This might be the first. The men have made great strides. Push bar, come on down.
Very slow start time. That's not a big surprise.
Well, they're small. They came in for their headshots. They don't weigh 130 pounds apiece. Good lines, though.
Yeah, the green and
As soon
yellow.
as I said that, ooh, watch the skid there. And I won't say anything else, but good. Oh, second down. Hey, it's a World Cup debut. Young.
Really, their faces will tell the story when we get down to the bottom. Relief, happiness, satisfaction, disappointment. Could be any of those.
There's 2 Korean TV crews coming to Lake Placid next week to cover the Korean athletes. And so they've already started building that momentum towards the 2018 Pyeongchang, Korea. They make it into the second run because there's only 20 sleds.
Only 20 sleds. They're a distant 20th for Sunak Kim and Miwa Shin. Champagne of thrills, competitively speaking.
Attention at the start, 15-minute warning. 15-minute warning for the form before we start the International Federation.
The lines. Well, this is how not to do it. She's pretty high, not too high, but boy, again, small, diminutive ladies. If they see them walking, you see they're not a lot to them. But boy, they've made great strides in the men's program.
Well, John, different week, same names and sleds at the top of the leaderboard.
Except for Fedelator.
Fenlater in 4th place, and the big exception more than that is the closeness among those top 3, which should set the stage for what should be a spectacular second run. You have any early any inkling on your part?
I think Humphries is going to have a better second run, but watch out for Jamie Krubel.
Absolutely. Humphries' start time could be better, and that could make a huge difference. Look at that. Sandra Kiriasis back in a tie for 10th place. And one other German sled behind her, and what's a very surprising little trend in the early going this season. Lots of interesting names, not just Fenlater of the U.S., but Spani, Kamphaus, Meyer, some new names in the top 10. Good to see. We've still got first heat of men's 2-man bobsled coming up in a second. Tweet us at Bobsleigh TV, B-O-B-S-K-E-L-E TV, or you can email us with your questions and comments. Stump the historian, John Morgan. Our email address is bobsleighTV@gmail.com. Coming back to you in just about 23 minutes for the start of the men's first run of competition. Until then, I'm Tim Singer along with John Morgan. North American domination in the women. What will the men bring? Coming up in a moment.